If someone would have told me back in 2020 that in 2026 I would have the balls and the bravery to discuss what I'm about to discuss to strangers on the internet, I would have been calling you a liar. Primarily because this part of my life was the most challenging. The circumstances around it carried so much shame, and I never thought that I would get past that. But I had several signs recently that really pushed me to actually share the story. And I was talking to one of my friends, and I just kept going back and forth with actually sharing it. But I did make this page specifically to be vulnerable for the women actively going through it, because once again, while I was in it, I felt like I was the only one, and I never want any other woman to feel like that. I never want any other man to feel like that, because you are not alone. What I've realized is that we are all living very similar experiences, but usually the shame of those experiences keeps us from feeling like a collective. So, story time of how I found out about my ex-husband being a serial cheater and eventually figuring out that he was a narcissist. Just to go ahead and give you guys a quick timeline to catch you up to March of 2020, when my life completely changed. So, August of 2019, I gave birth to my son. In October of 2019, I had the wedding of my dreams to what I thought was the love of my life. And in November of 2019, the day after Thanksgiving, my father transitioned to the next life with his battle with colon cancer. So during my whole period of my pregnancy, I was also dealing with watching one of the strongest men I know wither away right before my eyes. So it was such a bittersweet time for me, because while I was super excited to be carrying my first child, and obviously my family's first boy, because I had two bonus daughters, so this was his first boy, I was watching my dad deteriorate. But also planning a wedding, because his one request was that he walked his baby girl down the aisle and see me get married, which I had already been engaged for about 2 years at that time. We will go ahead and fast forward to March of 2020. I am dealing with significant postpartum. I am still grieving my dad heavily at this time, and I recognize that my body is not normal. My body feels exactly how it felt whenever I was first pregnant with my son. And I told my husband at the time, I was like, I can almost guarantee you that I'm pregnant. And to be quite frank, I'm not in a mental space to have any more children. It will be unfair to bring another life into this world and give them this kind of mother. So I went ahead and I called my OB. I took 2 at-home pregnancy tests. I went ahead, I called my OB and scheduled a appointment because I couldn't tell you how far along I was, honestly, because I wasn't having any menstrual cycles, because I was breastfeeding my son. He was about 5 to 6 months, so I did not have a normal cycle at that time. So I went ahead and I seen my OB the week after. I took my 2 at-home pregnancy tests that were positive, and obviously, if you've ever had a kid or dealt with pregnancy in general, you know that your first appointment, they are doing a routine urine sample for STDs, and 2, to make sure that you're actually pregnant. After that, I was able to see my OB, and I was pretty honest with my OB, and I was like, hey, I'm going to be completely honest. I don't think you're going to be seeing this one through. I'm honestly just here because I need to see how far along I am to figure out what my options are. And he was like, okay. He was like, no judgment here. This was prior to all this banning abortion BS. And he was like, well, let me go ahead and see if I can go ahead and get you at least an ultrasound today, so we can figure out how far you are. I luckily got in with my OB that day, and the minute she put that probe on my stomach, I tilted my head and I said, why does it look like there's 2 in there? She said, what do you do for a living? I said, well, I'm a dispatcher, because I was at the time. And she said, well, looks like you have a career in ultrasound tech, because here's baby A and here is baby B. For sure you can ask any twin mom about that nervous laugh that you do, because you're really not gathering what they putting down, honestly. And I knew in that moment that I was pretty much having those children. I always wanted twins. It was always the thing that I talked about whenever I was younger, and I was like, I'm just gonna have to carry this cross and figure it out. Furthermore, after I figured out it was twins, she then does all the measurements, and she gives me their due date. My due date for my twins was November 14th, which is very significant to me, because that is one of my big brother's birthday. Probably the biggest protector out of all of my siblings. They would have shared a birthday. That's very significant, once again, because my baby that is here, so Jake shares a birthday with my brother that passed away, and my twins were going to share a birthday with my biggest protector brother, if you will. And if you're spiritual, that was a divine thing all in itself, that all those birthdays aligned moving forward. Once again, I completely changed my mind on not going through with the pregnancy. We were just gonna have to figure it out. And I was going to have 3 under 2, to be quite frank. And I mentally started preparing myself for that. And then the next day happened. And life, as I knew it, completely changed. Nobody will ever tell me that it wasn't my dad getting to that other side and seeing what was going on behind my back and knowing that he had to show me, and it had to be drastic for me to take those rose-colored glasses off. I trusted my ex-husband with everything in me. Like, I was taught to as a wife, especially as a Southern wife. That's what you're taught to love and be naive and think that the person that vowed their whole life to you in honor of you and to protect you was actually going to do that. And it had to be something that he could not weasel his way out of. He could not gaslight me out of. Because if you have ever dealt with a narcissist, you know that they will make you question your reality. And I had questioned so many realities up until then. This I could not question. And it had to be something that drastic to knock off those rose-colored glasses I had on whenever it came to him. My OB calls back. If you're a woman, you already know that's not a good thing. I go ahead and I'm like, hey, is everything okay? Like, did something else come up in my scans that you guys didn't see? And the nurse pauses and she says, hey, Miss Sampay, we're going to need you to come back in. And I said, well, what's going on? Well, you tested positive for this, and this. We need you to come in and get treated. I had not been with anyone else other than my ex-husband since 2013. We were in 2020. And my OB was calling to let me know that I tested positive for trichomonas, chlamydia, and gonorrhea. While I am very thankful that they were 3 STDs that were treatable, the shame, the embarrassment, I had never had an STD in my life. I was a good girl. I kept my body count low. I got with my husband whenever I was 19. I hadn't been ran through like society makes you think you have to be in order to get an STD. Because we were all taught that, right? Only loose females get STDs. I go ahead and I hang up and I call my ex-husband. And I said, is there anything you would like to tell me? Those were my specific words, and I remember it like yesterday. I was pacing back and forth at the sheriff's office parking lot, pacing back and forth. And like a true narcissist, his specific words were, you're always effing accusing me of something. How do I not know it wasn't you that was sleeping around and you gave it to me? You came into this insecure and you always accused me of cheating. Click. That's how that conversation went. Yeah. My heart is honestly in my ass. I tried to go in and finish my shift. I eventually realized that I cannot finish anything. I cannot think straight. I leave work. I go home. I throw out his clothes. We had a bottle of vodka. I had my duty weapon and a bottle of spills. I finished that bottle of vodka, and I remember vividly rocking back and forth on my bathroom floor and saying, I just want to go meet my dad. I just want to go meet my brother. I just want to go meet my dad. I just want to go meet my brother. Because my life was falling apart. And I could not grasp being betrayed by that man the way he betrayed me after I took care of his 2 children. And be the best bonus mom and best wife that I could possibly be would, 1, put me in danger, 2, put our child's life in danger. And I was breastfeeding at the time, and that is a bodily fluid. I, for God knows how long, had these STDs. And that was my main concern at that time. I can tell you right now that if my child contracted any of those STDs, I would be in an orange jumpsuit right now. He comes home, he's tearing shit up like I'm the one that did something wrong, which is what narcissists do. They make you believe that you're the person that's completely wrong. So they're more angry than you. Like, he's tearing down our pictures and throwing shit around, and I'm like, wait, what the hell's actually going on? Because I could have sworn that I just found out that I had 3 STDs. What the hell are you throwing shit around? But if you ever dealt with a narcissist, they live in that false delusion, and he pretty much needed to run with the story that, how do I not know you did this to me? Because he's not admitting fault to anything at this point. And matter of fact, he did not admit fault until 3 days later, which wasn't by default. Stick around, I'll tell y'all. I make the appointment to go in and get treated. This is peak COVID time, you guys, so we're doing temperature scans at the door, and only a certain amount of people are allowed to get in, and I am dealing with the worst news that I have. I don't even know how to explain it. So I go into my OB's office, and there's a nurse outside taking the temperatures, and obviously I'm a wreck. I look like a wreck. And she was like, I know I'm not supposed to do this, but do you mind if I hug you? And I had not told anybody what I was going through at this moment, by this point. And that little lady, that little angel, put her arms around me, and I lose it outside of my OB's office. She was like, what's going on? And I started spilling my guts to this complete stranger, telling her that, you know, I just buried my dad, and I just got married, and I'm pregnant with twins, and that they just called me to tell me that I tested positive for all these things, and I didn't do anything. I did all the right things. I was a faithful woman. I did everything that I was taught to do, and here I am right now dealing with this. And she said, you get your babies and you get the hell out of there. And I get inside of my OB's office. He prescribed me the antibiotics for, I believe, the gonorrhea and the chlamydia, but you needed a shot for. I needed a shot for. So I had to go and get admitted to the hospital to get that shot, which the hospital was right next to my OB's office, so it was in walking distance. And I remember walking into the hospital and feeling so dirty. And I wanted to scream, I'm not responsible for this. I was a good girl. I was a good wife. I wasn't loose in any way because I'm in here getting treated for these things. They put me in the room. They come in to administer the shot, and they tell you pretty much have to wait 30 minutes to an hour to make sure you don't have any reaction to it. It is 6 years later, and I still cannot go into my OB's office without catching a panic attack. Whenever they take my blood pressure, they look at me and ask me if I feel dizzy, if I am having any headaches, because my blood pressure skyrockets every time I go to an OB's office till this day. And we are in 2026. That happened to me in 2020. So, as we all know, your body and your mind keeps the score of your trauma. That is how traumatic that was for me. Before I left my OB's office, he was like, unfortunately, Miss Sampe, I do have to go ahead and let you know that I do need to send you for testing for HIV and AIDS because they only ran certain panels in my OB's office. So after I got treated for trick, I then had to go to diagnostic something and get tested for HIV and AIDS. Phlebotomist in there. Once again, what's going on? Why do you look like this? You look like you have been having a hell of a day. Started spilling my guts yet again. And she said, excuse my French, sweetheart, but she said, you leave that son of a bitch and you leave him right now. Because anybody who doesn't care about themselves will never care about you or your children. Very blessed that those tests came back negative. He's still not admitting it, y'all. I just want to go ahead and let y'all know. He is still not admitting what he did. And then I was like, wait a minute. I was a good wife. As good wives do. I took care of the home. I forgot that I had been the person who set up his online insurance portal. And by then I was like, holy shit, like I have this written down somewhere. Lo and behold, this man got tested and treated in January of 2020 for said STDs. Keep in mind, we are in March of 2020. He tested himself, treated himself, and continued to have sex with me the entire time, which eventually led to him getting reinfected. Yeah, walk with me. Finally screenshot it, and I made it home. And I showed him this. I said, you still want to go ahead with the story that you don't know who did this, and you know, this is possibly me? And he was like, what do you mean? I'm like, what do you mean? I was like, I'm literally showing you your insurance documents from January 2020. He's like, I don't know what that is. I don't even know what that is. What are you talking about? I said, I want you out of my house. He was like, well, can we talk? You know, I'm about to go ride to my brother's. Can we talk? I said, I don't have anything to say to you. You've been lying to my face for 3 days, which I already knew you were lying because I knew what I've been doing with my vagina for all these years. I don't have anything to say to you. Get out of my house. The day he left that house, I kid you not, I remember this shit like yesterday. I kid you not, this man was in a hotel room, and I finally decided to open up Facebook to doom scroll. So I opened up Facebook, and while my world is crashing and crumbling down, this man makes a post joking about Tiger King on Facebook. Like he didn't just get kicked out. Like I just then found out that he gave me 3 STDs. Like I was not prepared to take myself out. Joking and clowning, like absolutely nothing was happening. I'm talking, he's going about his day, going to the gym. Like I'm trying to go to work, and my shift is texting me saying, we don't know what's going on, but we know something is not right. You're usually the light in this room, and you have left every day. You have not said anything, and we are concerned. I really wanted to have this conversation. He was like, you know, it was from my bachelor party, and now he had 3 days to come up with this lie, y'all. 3 days. I never thought I was going to share this story, honestly, because I didn't leave after that. He used the fact that he's super scared to have 3 kids alone. I could not figure out how I was going to ever do that alone. And I felt so much shame. I felt so low for staying with a man after doing that to me. It caused an awakening that had to happen. To realize the issues that I had within myself, to accept those things and not leave immediately. But once again, if you dealt with a narcissist, there was the love bombing. Oh, I can do everything right. The crying, the fake tears, we can work on this, and we're gonna be a family. We're gonna figure this out, and all the things after a narcissistic abusive episode. And I can tell you that I was not strong enough to leave. Not at that moment. I had already lost too much within a very short amount of time. And at the time, I thought it was just a one-time mistake. I had just made a vow for forever. The Bible, I was full Christian at the time. The Bible tells you to forgive. And first time is a mistake, and after that, it's a choice. And I'm like, we're gonna go to therapy, we're gonna try to work this out. I did not have this big ass wedding, a divorce a couple of months later. I just lost my dad. I cannot deal with another loss right now. And so I stayed. I never thought, like I said, I was gonna share that part of my story on how I found out that he was unfaithful, because I was so scared that everybody would call me stupid and say, oh, I wouldn't do this, and oh, you're dumb for staying, and I was so worried about what everybody would think. But why am I ashamed? I did nothing wrong. I did what I thought was right at the time, and I no longer share that shame, that burden. I tell it freely now, because that's not it wasn't my problem. The only thing I was guilty of, once again, was loving a man who was incapable of loving me, and honestly, quite frankly, loving himself. I'm so past that. This is life after leaving. Every day is not going to be about the trauma that I went through when I was married, because that's not my full life. That was just a chapter. I am genuinely happy with the woman that I am now. I needed to learn those lessons. When I learned them, you can do all the things right and still get effed over. You can follow all the rules of being a good girl, and that does not save you from outcomes that you are not in control of. So I share that story with y'all because I'm on the other side and I don't care. I have no problem being the sacrificial lamb and telling my story if that means I help one person feel like they are not alone in something, and that it's not your shame, it's not your guilt, it's nothing that you did wrong. And eventually, it will pass. It will feel like death, but it will pass. And once again, I'm living proof of that. I did forget to add how validating it was whenever the T app came out. I never got on that app because that did not align with my energy, that did not align with who I am, but a lot of people screen recorded a lot of things, and it made its way to me. So how validating it was for multiple women to be on there saying that he burned them as well. Because once again, he stayed with the story that he only cheated once, and that resulted into 3 STDs. So there were multiple women on the T app saying that he burned them as well. And also, which I was already aware of, the smear campaign that he was going around telling everyone that I was the person that cheated on him. Which, once again, I was already aware that he was going around telling people that. And I remember telling one of my friends also this. I was like, I can't believe that he's going around telling people when I have all this proof. And he's still going around this narrative that I was the cheater and I was the one that broke up our family. And I was the narcissist. And I'm like, oh my God. And I hope this video reaches someone who is possibly going through something like that, dealing with a narcissist, getting a divorce, dealing with unfaithfulness in their marriage, thinking, how in the hell will I get through this?